I'm a singer-songwriter. I've been at it for many years, on and off, part-time and full-time. I've been in a lot of original bands, uh, did a cover band thing once. Before I was a singer-songwriter, actually, I was doing drums a lot, musically, semi-professionally in a bunch of bands, and I would still say that's my strongest instrument. And one of my greatest influences to go solo at one point was a band I was in whose lyrics were all about very interesting things, hopeful things, spiritual things, maybe positive things. And I was really influenced by them for doing that with the lyrics. And then when the band split up, I was like, well, I don't want to drum for anyone anymore. I want to be in a band where it's also got a purpose. So that's how I started my own thing.
Cool. That's interesting that drums, you consider drums your most proficient instrument. That's not really common with most singers.
When I was around 12, I believe I asked my parents for a saxophone for Christmas, and they gave me a guitar. And I remember the first thought was massive disappointment. But I accepted it, and they enrolled me in lessons, and it was actually a terrible guitar upon reflection. The strings were like that far away from the neck. It was a very cheap guitar. Caused me a lot of pain, but did that for a couple of years formally, and that was my real introduction to music. And after doing that for a few years, I got one of the first electronic drum sets, and that was the kind of transition to drumming, and I did that for a lot of years. So between guitar and drums, those two kept me busy musically, and eventually, did the usual in high school, got into bands with friends thing, and from there on, continued on until the point I'm at now.
Awesome. What's that guitar behind you? It's.
Oh yeah, well, that's my main guitar actually. It's a classical guitar. It's a La Patrie, which is, I believe, made in Quebec, which is a province here in Canada.
Fancy.
And I actually compose these days mostly on a classical guitar. I have noticed, and I'm sure other singer-songwriters might say this, depending on the instrument you write on will provide different results in the end game for the song. Like if you pound a song out on a piano, it's going to sound different than obviously guitar. And between guitars, even if I was on the electric, my songwriting would end up being different than being on that classical.
Right.
So yeah, it's my main guitar. So I just have it always handy and grab it so I can put something out easily.
Good idea. That's cool.
I did the traditional singer-songwriter thing for a while here in Toronto. And, I started throwing around the tagline, the man of song, because, I'd reached a certain age and I was like, well, I'm not going to do, a young teenager sort of thing. So the man was in there. But Dyniss actually in Latvian means man of song, if you translate it literally. So I've got a bit of a double thing going on. It's like salsa sauce. You shouldn't say salsa sauce because salsa actually means sauce in Spanish.
Right.
So Dyniss, the man of song, means the man of song, the man of song. Anyway, sorry, what was the question? There's only, in some cases, or should I say the vast majority of cases, so many financial rewards doing traditional singer-songwriter stuff these days. I used to say only the top 1% might make it, in terms of like a really good income in most genres. And now I think it's more like the 1% of the 1%. So we do have to find alternative ways of generating revenue. So I did some investigation and I found this guy in California. His name is Tiamo. And he has been creating several alternative streams of income. One of them has been doing corporate gigs blended with speaking. And since I have a lot of corporate experience, I've worked in a supply chain in the head offices of a couple of major retailers here in Canada. I thought, why don't I blend my corporate experience, you know, because I know that environment, I know how to communicate to those sorts of crowds with my music. And so this guy Tiamo has done it. So I kind of modeled him and then put my own twist on it. And, you know, it basically involved setting up a new sort of website. So it was a little more friendly to that crowd and highlighting the things I've done for others instead of music about oneself. For example, I wrote the official theme song for the Green Party of Canada. And so that's for writing a song for an organization, right? So that was my first organizational credit. So I had to highlight that and get a testimonial from the president here, or the leader. So that was one way to kind of start up the business and the branding. And then I just started doing a lot of cold calling, which was the most difficult part of the job. And I think even as a regular singer-songwriter, you have to do that, or cold emailing. And just started, you know, reaching out to event planners and companies, and started, you know, offering my services. Saying, for example, if you have an AGM, also known as an annual general meeting, if you'd like something really different to close it off, for example, I can do that. You know, if you are used to hiring a usual speaker, forget about that. Try me for a change. It's more of a two-way experience, and people remember emotions better than they do information. So that's kind of been a good angle and a good selling point. You know, I just had a show in Ottawa like a week and a half ago, which is the capital of Canada. You know, that was about 140 people, and it was only a 30-minute set, 3 songs mixed with speaking. And, you know, it pays really well, a gig like that, like more than any average, you know, show that we would do as singer-songwriters would pay, unless, of course, you've got a huge following. So that's kind of how I got into it, by modeling, like looking for an alternative way to make money in the industry, then modeling this guy Tiamo, putting my own twist on it, and then just doing the kind of hard work of reaching out to the right sorts of people. Obviously, it's an invented word. I'm seeing how sticky it is. It does raise eyebrows.
I thought it was cool.
Okay, good. It's a blend of thinking and entertainment, obviously. I'm a real head guy, a little less heart. I mean, if I'm just speaking transparently, I really think a lot and maybe overthink, philosophize a lot about things. And I put that into my songs too. You know, I don't have a lot of girl breakup songs, for example. You know, it's more philosophical stuff, or, you know, deep thinking type themes, idealistic themes. So it's kind of thinking music if you listen to the lyrics. And I want audiences to also think, you know, about anything from, you know, the environment to loving others, you know, to being tolerant of, you know, other religions, for example, that aren't your own, like all this stuff that, you know, we could debate and everyone has an opinion on. I love making songs around. So that's the thinking part of the songs, and the speaking that I blend with that at a live show is part of that too. I'll pose questions to the audience. I'll give them examples to think about. Going back to that show last week, for example, the last song, for example, was about gratitude. The song is called This Voice. And I ask people to think about things that they're grateful for, right? And I gave some examples of things that I'm grateful for, and I gave them actual items from my gratitude journal that I keep intermittently. So they were things like the purring of my cat, Kazoo, who you saw in the video. So I'm very grateful when my cat purrs. It's super relaxing. I was grateful for free parking that I got the day before. I was grateful for the date with my girlfriend just a few days prior. You know, I was grateful for my warm bed. You know, these are very basic things, and gratitude it isn't about something like, oh my gosh, I should be so grateful for this, what a surprise. It's usually small things that are every day in our faces. I'm getting the audience in that case to think about gratitude through my examples and asking them these questions. And then in this particular case, because it's a show for an organization, I say, what are you grateful for in this organization, right? And then I give them a couple of examples there. I might say, are you grateful for who you work with? Are you grateful for the leadership here? Are you grateful for this weekend conference that you've just attended? The breakfast you got for free this morning, right? There's so many little things. And then what I get the audience to do is I get them to text me in their answers. And they appear on screen. And it's a pretty good system I've got. And you see the answers appear. Anyway, this is a long way of explaining the thinking part of what I do, right? Then I kick into the song itself. And yes, the lyrics are still about gratitude and thinking about gratitude, but now there's an entertainment component, which is me actually playing the song. These days I'm using more backing tracks than live guitar or band. It's just simpler and fuller sounding, and I think audiences are more accepting of that these days than needing to see a live band. But anyway, that's an aside. And then I perform the song, and I have the lyrics on screen for them to follow along with. So that's the entertainment part. And in the middle of the song, I will loop the bridge usually, and then you'll see those responses people have texted in, kind of scan through the screen. So that's also the entertaining part for them, seeing what their peers think. Then I go to the next slide. I usually have PowerPoint, and finish up the song with the last lyrics. And maybe at the end of the song, I've got a tip. So, yeah, okay, that's the applause, take a bow. And that whole process is about 10 minutes of the speaking, the thinking, and the entertainment. So that's the whole thinkertainment concept I have going right now.
Cool. Yeah, you've really figured out your own little niche there. That's neat.
Yeah, I mean, the trick is, I think, for all of us artists, though, is to sell it, right?
Right.
Sell and expose your brand or your concept or your music. I in this process have discovered that if you build it, they will not come.
Right.
You know that expression?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's just so much information and people vying for our attention all the time these days that we really have to go after people in terms of making them aware of what we're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that's you'd think that would be a very easy question, but in a way I feel challenged by it because I have, you know, a very unique experience. I was like an engineer and producer for many years, music producer, and I got exposed to like a couple of hundred bands even. And so I've got really good studio chops and spend a lot of time with, you know, good songwriters. So I've absorbed a lot of good stuff working in a studio and can apply those skills to a recording and production and also to the songwriting part now. So my tip would be, first of all, a common one that I think a lot of people do repeat, and that is that a song itself really matters. You know, a well-crafted song. You know, I hear so many songs by you know, my peers, and I think, not that I'm making, you know, necessarily Academy Award winning songs, but there are certain elements and tricks that should be in songs and processes. And I hear that lacking from a lot of people's original music anyway, right? So if you can improve your songs, the essence of them, I think that's the first thing you have to do. Get into co-writing with people who are stronger than you, if possible. Don't be shy about sharing rights to writing a song. You know, it's only going to make stuff better. So that's tip one. Tip two is, when it comes to the production and arrangement of the song, that is these days, I think, just as important. I've listened to music transform over the decades, and you know, now the sound really matters in a way. You know, the sound and the rhythm is, you know, very key. Like, are your sounds cool? Are your sounds reflective of who you are? And do they have a particular vibe that's going to be unique to you? You know, you really have to get into, I think, learning what makes a good arrangement and a good production. And if it's too much of a challenge, because it does take time to study and experiment and use your computer and do all that stuff, then also don't be shy of getting a good producer to work on your music, right? Even if it's just a part of the production. Like, you don't have to do it from start to finish with producer, because I know budget is a question to many artists. But if you can align with someone, again, who's better than you, do it. You know, this is going to bring you, I think, you know, success when people hear your music, these two things. Well, this is more of a maybe. I just released a zombie song. I think that's how we connected.
Saw that.
And I tried something new, which is using an alternative voice, like a completely different vocal expression.
You got high. You get really high in that. That's really impressive.
Right. Yeah. Everyone's saying, oh, that's so crazy and stuff, but like, I don't know why it's not that difficult. I guess because it's very nasal. If you study the voice, if you go into, I think it's called the pharyngeal type vocal, then that allows you to go a lot higher than using like what we call the full mix vocal. So I think that's how it is able to go so high. Anyway, my point is, it might be that my next EP will be all dual voices. So that zombie song is the first attempt at having a second voice from one singer in a song. And I have, last month I wrote another one, which is not produced yet, which is taking the perspective of a male, myself, like normal voice, and he is sexually harassing a lady, right? And this is a very common problem in today's society. And then in the choruses, I take on the role of female with a sort of mock voice, but I've got to be very careful that I'm not making fun of any females or anything like that. But I take her perspective, which is offended by it, of course, and all the thoughts that she is experiencing when she's being harassed. And I actually asked a few of my female friends what they think when guys are harassing them, right? Just verbally. And so I might record that song. Then I have this other really cool song called The Landmark, which is about a couple, middle-aged, that have fallen out of love, and they're wanting to go back and find this landmark that they used to know. And I am probably going to do another voice for that. So this is the only major future thing I have to offer you. I may be shifting to do this kind of double voice thing in every song. I might do 4 or 5 songs. Another fistful. I've been releasing recently like 5 songs at a time as like fistfuls of music. So the next fistful might be dual voices, which could be very unique and interesting, and will only further emphasize the lyrics, which are important to me. Dyniss.com is probably the best spot. There's most stuff about me there, well organized. However, the brand new zombie song is only on my YouTube channel. So it's YouTube.com/C/Dyniss. I am on Facebook and Twitter, but I usually just post just little updates. So it's not necessarily my music there.
Right.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, just reach out to me. I love communicating with people. If you have any questions, or actually, if anyone reads this and are part of a medium or large company, I mean, I'd love to play for you guys. And usually I'd speak to the, the marketing VP or somebody like that, if you want to connect me.
They heard how I spoke. They said I'd always be